Korea, hope spread with the armistice. North Korean General Nam-il signed for the aggressors, after which U.S. General Harrison acted for the United Nations. But the hush in the hills became uneasy with the exchange of prisoners, the Reds showing defiance instead of repentance. And Generals Clark and Taylor, welcoming UN prisoners, heard tales of atrocities which shocked the free world. Cruelties confirmed by General Dean, the highest-ranking officer to be captured and released by the Reds.
Blast from the past. Some Americans call it the forgotten war, a conflict in a far-off country so painful that even some survivors try to forget about it. The North Koreans, though, in the meantime, have certainly not forgotten about it. And 60 years after the end of the Korean War, the country is marking tomorrow's anniversary with a massive celebration. They call it Victory Day, even though the two sides only signed a truce and have yet to really negotiate a real peace treaty. As part of this weekend's events, the North is mounting a huge, colorful extravaganza filled with all sorts of propaganda. For example, they're putting a U.S. Navy ship captured during the Cold War in the 1960s on display. The celebrations all leading up to a massive military parade ending with fireworks. Our next guest really has an interesting story, some very interesting insights in North Korea. Michael Malice recently visited the country on a guided tour. He's also working on a book about North Korea's former dictator titled Dear Reader, the Unauthorized Autobiography of Kim Jong-il, and Michael joins us now. So, Michael, there's a lot of places in the world you can go.
That's right.
Why did you choose North Korea?
Well, I was born in the former Soviet Union, so this would be my only chance to see what my family kind of went through. And also, you have great credit parties. You can be like, oh, you've never been to North Korea? It's the new Milan.
So how did you end up going? Because, I mean, I would even think that we're allowed to go.
North Korea is desperate for money. They're the first communist nation to ever declare default in their loans. So you just got to pay your bills. All these journalists who say they snuck in are not being, honest. It's as simple as that, and it's legal, and the government knows you're there from the U.S. and from the North Korean side.
So it's interesting to note your background with the Soviet Union. There was an old Soviet plane, so you're getting ready to go to North Korea.
Right.
The aircraft that's taking you there is Soviet.
Well, no, they upgraded to 80s aircrafts now.
They did.
And in fact, when one of my colleagues on the tour complained about it on Instagram, they liked her post. So they're on the internet and they're watching. It's pretty creepy.
But when you're there,
yeah,
are they also watching you?
Oh, in the hotel you don't have surveillance, but everyone in North Korea is always being watched by somebody else. In fact, once a week they have these kind of AA meetings called criticism sessions where you have to declare to your neighbors things you did incorrect that week, and they denounce you as well.
Wow, we're taking a look at some of the photographs that you took when you were
the kids are really cute.
In the country. Were you just able to take any sort of photograph that you wanted to take?
Absolutely. They didn't have anything off limits. But, North Korea is segregated by your caste system. If you're not to be trusted, you live in different villages, so those you don't get to see. So you get to see the places where people are trusted and put on a nice face.
You say in some cases this is actually one of the most relaxing trips
you've
ever been on. Why?
Well, because it's the only place on Earth where you have no contact with the outside world. There's no internet, there's no phone, no one's calling you, no alarms going off, no email checking. You really are on another planet back in time. And
that's because you have to leave any sort of computer or cell phone at the airport?
That's right. At the airport, they confiscate your cell phone. If you're not going to have internet access, that's for sure, in the whole country, despite Eric Schmidt's visit. So it's really kind of isolating. And the news are all about Kim Jong-il, so even the news aren't about the rest of the world.
You've had some interesting interactions that you talk about with some of the North Koreans that were part of your guided tour while you were there. Is there one moment in particular that stands out to you in your multi-day travels there in the country? What can you share with our viewers? What stands out most to you about North Korea?
Well, the most poignant moment, as I was talking about in the article, is, I was telling my guide that she reminded me a lot of my mom, and now I knew what my mom went through growing up in Russia, and my guide kind of paused, and she goes, then your mother must have hated Russia. So these people, more information is coming in through China, through South Korea, so there is an awareness of how things are bad there. And in fact, the North Korean government has changed their propaganda. It used to be everything's great, the whole world envies us, and now it's like we're going to have a greater tomorrow, live, die today, live for tomorrow.
That's very interesting. Did they treat you any differently because you were an American? Did you see any reference to the United States when you were there?
Well, of course, you have all the signs about Americans getting smashed in the face and all this awful stuff, but everyone was extremely friendly, because when you're in Pyongyang, you're part of the elite, and they try to think of themselves as cosmopolitan, kind of like New Yorkers or London people do, and they very much distance themselves from the rural people in the other parts of the country.
And of course, there's so many different questions questions about what's happening in the rural parts of the country and whether or not these are concentration camps that we've heard a lot about with hundreds of thousands of people kept in them.
That's right.
I'm going to go back to your family story because you came from the Soviet Union into Brooklyn.
That's right.
And so you make this trip to North Korea to sort of see what was the Soviet Union really like. What did my family come from?
Right.
How do you feel about your country now that you've taken this trip? Has that changed the way that you feel about being an American?
I mean, I bless this country. I mean, and that's why I felt so bad for my guide, because she works 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and she will never be able to go anywhere with her life. She will never have a car. She'll never have a computer. She'll never be able to go online. She'll never be able to be an author like I am. So if I was in the Soviet Union, my life would be much poorer for it, even if it was just Russia. So I'm very grateful to be an American.
It's a fascinating perspective. Would you suggest this trip to anyone out there?
Absolutely. It's the most fascinating. It sounds so dangerous and it's so safe. So it's just, you have the most cred, and it's just the most interesting thing because everything about it is interesting and chosen and crazy, and 60 years of isolation.
So Rick is our co-anchor, of course, on the other set. Rick, Michael says that he felt safer in Pyongyang than you feel in New York sometimes?
If I'd killed someone, I would have just gotten deported. There would be no repercussions because I'm there under the government's auspices.
Very interesting. Michael, thank you. We look
Thank
forward
you so
to your
much.
book. I know it comes out in a couple months.
In October, yes.
So we'll look forward to that, have you back to talk more about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Rick, what do you think about that?
It's a fascinating story, and you know, I think they've cleaned up New York City quite a bit, though. We're pretty safe.
Right, we can't knock our own city,
Head on over to
Rick?
Times Square, Michael. It's like Disneyland.